Hello, welcome to another edition of WIRSPA's Icon Series. My name is Matt Pedrick, and in the Icon Series, we interview people who've made a substantial contribution to Caribbean rum over their career. Today's guest is Clement Jimmy Lawrence, who's WIRSPA chairman of the board, as well as the chairman of the rum industry of Jamaica. Good morning, Jimmy. How are you today?
Good morning, Matt. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We've interviewed many icons of Caribbean rum, and glad to add you to the portfolio. We'll be talking about some of these other icons and your interactions with them later in the session. So let's jump right in. In the beginning, tell us a little bit about your Jamaican roots, your early days.
Okay, so Matt, I was born in rural Santana. I spent my early years there until I was about age 11. And from early on, I was surrounded by the culture, the history, and the industries that define so much of our national identity, The sugar and rum industries were not in my community per se, but they were not distant stories to me since my mom hailed from St. Thomas, and she, was relatively close to the Golden Grove factory. So I used to hear stories about that. Certainly, those early days gave me a strong sense of community and hard work and an appreciation for heritage, which certainly have stayed with me throughout my career. It was a formative time for me. I was surrounded by community, nature, family, and the values that grounded me certainly for life. At that age, I earned a scholarship and attended Yorkcastle High School as a boarder. So I went to boarding school, and you know what that entails. It's a cosmopolitan community. Everybody's there, and you learn the ways of foreigners, locals, rich, poor. A diverse environment, I can tell you, and very leveling. To teach or instill humility in one. So a shift from that community to left boarding school was an early lesson for me in independence and resilience for sure.
So I understand your mother wanted you to go into the medical profession, be a doctor. I understand something set you off in a different direction here. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I believe 95% of mothers in the world used to, before AI, wanted their sons or even daughters to, be doctors and lawyers. And certainly my mother chose, medicine for me. Yes, she had very high hopes for me pursuing medicine. I actually entered university. I went to the University of the West Indies with the intention to be, a doctor, But certainly one experience in the medical sciences lab changed everything for me. Viewing a cadaver that was deeply unsettling. It was deeply, deeply unsettling for me. And it was a moment of clarity that medicine wasn't my calling. So instead, I gravitated towards the natural sciences because I considered myself a scientist, chemistry, zoology, physics. And that decision certainly disappointed my mother at first, but it set me on a path that ultimately defined my career.
Right. Physics major here, so I completely understand your thinking there. So after completing university, where was your first field of work? What did you start doing once you left?
I joined Colgate Palmolive company. In those days, Colgate Palmolive had a manufacturing plant here in Jamaica. So I started out as a production planner. It was a great introduction to the world of manufacturing and product development within a global company. So I had that first experience in what is a global company that demanded high standards, very well organized. Everything was cataloged, procedural scripts were all there to do just about everything. And it gave me a solid foundation in operations and innovation. And I learned to marry technical expertise with practical outcomes, So over the 18 years, I moved through roles as purchasing manager, engineering manager, technical manager, and eventually manufacturing manager with overall responsibilities. My focus was always on production operations, though, focusing on efficiency, quality, and systems. But I also got glimpses of the marketing side, which one particular manager had a strong interest in me doing marketing, even though I didn't really switch over there, but I learned a great deal there.
So, what were some of the Colgate Palmolive products that you might have worked on over the years?
Okay, so my work at Colgate Palmolive, and just to interject, I went to Colombia. I lived in Cali for just under a year. So then I wasn't with Colgate, and I was with Colgate Palmolive, right? So I didn't learn much Spanish there, I can assure you, except for cerveza, the essentials of life. So I was involved in packaging innovations, including, case specification designs. I oversaw the Ajax bleach manufacturing. We had to re-implement that with safety and concerns because we had an accident once. And so I was there leading that team to make those safety upgrades. I also worked on what was Axion, which is a detergent, cream detergent formulation to allow it to use local ingredients. In particular, Jamaica has abundant calcium carbonate. So that was good to incorporate that instead of some silicates or, that kind of abrasive. So I contributed to Colgate toothpaste too in terms of formulation, again using abrasives. So, very fine abrasives would be in your toothpaste to get all that gunk off your teeth. But these projects were rewarding because they combined, global brand standards with local adaptation. Something that stayed with me throughout my career. Those experiences taught me how to innovate with limited resources, and how to apply local insights to, let's say, regional challenges. Because in the day, Colgate Palmolive here was the regional head for the Caribbean.
So I understand that you were doing computers even before I was. I didn't know anybody did computers before I did in the early 1980s, but you've told me a little bit about it. Share that with our audience here, and also sort of how that later influenced your subsequent career.
Yes, yes, of course. In fact, I was tinkering with computers before Colgate Palmolive actually, and there's a computer called a Sinclair and a Commodore VIC,
Hmm.
which
Vic
I
20?
bought myself. I mean, what I spent then would be equivalent to, I would say, $5,000 now in terms of,
Right.
what it cost me.
Same
But
here. Same here.
but suffice it to say, my fascination with computers, like I said, in the late 70s, I taught myself basic programming. Oh, that's a whole other story because I wrote the lines of my first program, one, two, three, four. And if you know anything about editing, you don't do that because if you have to edit, you'd have to insert lines and you can't insert 1.1. You'd have to start like 10, 20, 30, numbering the lines. And, it was a big lesson for me then. But I mastered tools like Lotus 123, Database 2, WordPerfect, the whole suite. When the IBM PC launched in 1980, I believe it was. I immediately saw its potential. That early start gave me an edge on process automation, data analysis, problem solving ultimately. It also shaped my mindset to embrace technology as a driver for change, which proved invaluable as industries I later entered into, went through major transformations and tech was it. So, for example, as purchasing man, I had to calculate material pricing then, and material price. Those days we had what was called the crawling peg devaluation, and believe it or not, we had devaluations every day. It was a very volatile environment with those daily devaluations, as I indicated before. So the PC allowed me to build models using a spreadsheet, of course, that made those calculations instant and reliable because all I had to do was just to enter the new exchange rate and all my material prices just rippled through. Voila, magic, saving me enormous time, of course. So I embraced technology fully, and I even got to a point where I was training colleagues across departments. Ultimately, I was able to lead the Wray Nephew team in the implementation of SAP. That's just skip ahead, I think it came out of that, pulling on the experiences I had. So looking back, the impact of adopting PCs then was a profound and embracing as AI is today, which I am also embracing, even at age 70, you know. So it gave me an early appreciation of how technology can transform, you know, decision making and efficiency.
And I say that resonates with me as somebody who built their career on, their initial career on implementing technology and using it to solve problems and evolve things. So, it's great to see other people do it who are also in rum having done that.
Sure thing.
So you left Colgate Palmolive in 1995 or thereabouts. After 17 years with Colgate Palmolive, where did you land next?
Yeah, so 17 years was a lifetime, and I thought I, was retiring after that for sure. Well, that was not the case. So in 1995, Colgate was actually exiting manufacturing in Jamaica. I think they eventually started doing some manufacturing in Dominica, island of Dominica, not Dominican Republic, Dominica. So I was actually invited to go there, but for my family plans, I didn't want to do that. So I transitioned to Lascelles deMercado. Um, I moved to Lascelles deMercado, which broadened my professional scope beyond household products into pharmaceuticals, agricultural products, plastics, household products, beverages, and spirits. So it was new and great. Ultimately, yeah, it was a significant shift. It gave me a chance to apply my skills to a different type of manufacturing and branding environment. It was also a fascinating period because I became general manager for several subsidiaries, including Federated Pharmaceuticals, Limited, Lascelles Wines and Spirits Limited, Lascelles Laboratories Limited, Agricultural Chemicals Limited, and Plastic Containers Limited. So this gave me a wide exposure to different industries under one corporate umbrella. And, that's really lucky instead of trotting around to different types of companies as there, but with that exposure. And that was really great. So it laid the groundwork for my eventual move to Jerry and Nephew.
And for those of our readers, I'm sorry, readers, a few of our listeners who aren't aware of it, Lascelles de deMercado, you've pronounced it better than I do, is also the parent company of Wray and Nephew. So
Yes.
just add that in there. So
Yes.
one of your early projects with Lascelles was Magnum Tonic Wine. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so let me just add context. So there was Ray Nephew, which was like the U.S. Army um, equivalent in the business, and then there was Lascelles Limited, which were both subsidiaries of Lascelles deMercado, which was like your favorite guerrilla um, organization. So U.S. Army guerrillas. So they had a big, their launches were beautiful, very well set out. Our launches were, on a table at the wharf, kind of a thing. That's the difference between two. So I joined there, and at Lascelles Limited, which also had Lascelles Wines and Spirits, which I was at the time, we needed a competing product with Reneve, quite frankly. I mean, they had white overproof. We didn't quite have, definitely didn't have a powerful brand like that. They had what was red label wine. We had nothing. So eventually we came up with Magnum Tonic Wine. But we pitched it so that it was premium to the offering from Ray Nephew. And so that's how Magnum was conceived. It was a very exciting project. Of course, the resources were limited. Remember, I told you we were like gorillas, right? So instead of using an external agency, I had to personally design the Magnum label, of course, in collaboration with the label manufacturer, right? Concept and, outlines,
Right.
that kind of a thing. And the experience showed me that, creativity and resourcefulness could make up for the constraints, particularly with budgetary constraints and so on. Yeah, the project became a success. It was a huge success. To this day, Magnum is, the exports to the UK are tremendous. Of course, I can't speak volumes now. I'm a retired person. I don't know those numbers anymore. But certainly taught me the value of boldness and resourcefulness in brand development, and it made me proud to see the brand become a real cultural icon. Because let me tell you, the people who love Magnum, you know, they, they will tell me what it's all about. I can't tell them. They know. And that's so powerful, when a brand is embraced in that way.
And if I remember correctly, didn't you say Joy Spence was involved at some point with this?
Absolutely. Joy is involved in everything. So, like I indicated to you, the formulation was not me. That needs somebody with great competence, and that would be Joy. I was there in the ideation and creation of the label and the related logistics at the time. And in fact, we outsourced the production to Renewy then, because they had the machinery and equipment to do that. So, it was integrated in that way, but it was certainly our brand and product, our meaning Lascelles Limited, or Lascelles Wines and Spirits as it was then.
So you were at Lascelles for over a decade before you transitioned to Wray and Nephew in 2008. What drove this transition and why?
Oh, Matt, you should never use words like you were there for a decade. It makes me feel so old. But it's true.
Same here.
Um, in 2008, Billy McConnell, then managing director, he asked me to transfer to Real Nephew. I put that lightly, but he really said, production needs your leadership. I was trying to resist, but he put it in such a way where he threatened me into agreeing, quite frankly. I didn't want to leave Los Angeles because I love the environment there. I love the way of work. I love the people, the culture. But frankly, that wasn't my decision. He decided for me, and I simply had to accept. So I accepted and stepped in as chief operating officer for production operations at Renewy. The move to Renewy was a good natural progression. As it was the core of the Lascelles group. It was an exciting opportunity for me to contribute directly to such an iconic Jamaican brand. I felt the right time to bring my expertise to bear in a company that meant so much to our heritage. And thereafter things just grew from strength to strength.
So after 2 decades of production from starting at Lascelles in 1995, after 2 decades doing production technical side of things, suddenly you're thrust into a marketing department role. What was that like?
Yeah, so eventually when I got there, Mr. McConnell again broadened my responsibility from being chief operating officer for production to chief operating officer of the company, which incorporated marketing. Oh boy. I remember I told you, I'm not a trained marketing person, but I have insights and some exposure, right? So yeah, it was a complete change for me. Moving from production to marketing, it turned out to be one of the most rewarding transitions of my career, quite frankly. And I had to learn quickly about consumer engagement, storytelling, brand positioning, all the jargon that surrounds marketing itself. That experience made me a more rounded leader, though. One that could balance technical expertise with understanding of the consumer. That was one of the toughest transitions of my career, too, quite frankly. The marketing team, reasonably so, was skeptical, given that I wasn't a trained marketer. You can imagine, you're assuming this role in a spirits company. So I had to burn the midnight oil, studying marketing. The principles, that is, not really to become an effective marketer, but to hold my own in conversations and to sound and appear intelligent, if not intellectual. So
Right.
um, that was that. So what changed my perspective, though, was realizing that leadership isn't about technical mastery. It certainly is. At least it's a part, but it's not the whole thing. It's about enabling and guiding capable people to perform at their best. So my role was to make sure I had the right team. I needed to have the best marketers, right? And I needed to ensure that they collaborated as a team. That mindset shift helped me earn the team's respect and to align marketing with operations. And it really went very, very well in the end.
And I can imagine that how difficult that was, because as somebody again with a technical production background, where everything's data driven and it works or it doesn't work, and you go
Yeah.
troubleshoot it, and you have data, and you talk to engineers to go to a completely different world where everything is soft and there's like perceptions, and so I imagine that had to have been a challenge, as you said. So, uh, in 2012, Campari bought Lascelles and Wray and Nephew as part of the deal. I assuming primarily for Wray and Nephew. Now, Campari is a very large Italian company, and obviously Wray and Nephew is a very Jamaican company. So I imagine there was some integration time and work to do. What was your role in that, and what was the transition like?
Okay, great question, because that was very eventful. First, just to clarify something, in it to my mind, I wasn't sitting at the table on the other side, but I think Campari acquired the Lascelles deMercado and its related businesses for expressly for Appleton Estate, not really Renevue, as in Renevue White Overproof rum. It was Appleton Estate, right? And of course, subsequently, I know they're acutely aware of how powerful Rear Nephew White Overproof is. So, it's like a double dip for the price of one, right? Really. And kudos to them, and very well executed. And it provided that lifeline that I know Billy McConnell pursued for years to find a better distribution platform for the brands to go global. But to answer your question, though, becoming MD meant leading not just operations, but steering the company strategically within the global framework that was presented now. It was a humbling and rewarding experience. And I viewed the opportunity as, to demonstrate that Jamaican leadership could thrive on the world stage as something that I was going to do if it killed me. I mean, I really tried to engage every fiber of my being into enrolling others of the team about us demonstrating who we are, or intellect or capabilities in that regard. So my role initially is to help bridge the gap between two very different cultures. I worked to ensure that the Jamaican traditions and identity were respected. Why? Because you needed to preserve that. They're buying a brand and a company that operates in a particular way, and it yields benefits, which I'm sure they wanted to continue. So while doing that, and while adopting Campari's global standards and practices, because we're now becoming a Campari company, and we needed to meld into that, right? So it wasn't easy, but in retrospect, I think we struck a very good balance. We preserved the Jamaican essence while you could say, while building a stronger and more competitive global company out of what we had. So the acquisition shifted Reneve's role from being the global commercial hub. So remember, in the beginning, locally, we're the head office. We're it. And, whether it's New Zealand or Canada, or in fact, those guys had to come here to meet at the head office to discuss plans and so on. So budgets and what have you. Like I said, the acquisition shifted, Renevue role from being the global commercial to becoming a supply chain hub for Campari. We integrated the Italian and Jamaican cultures. Basically, it wasn't easy, but I approached it through engagement, transparency, and respect for both traditions, and that's how you meld them together. What helped was Campari's strong leadership, I thought. I recall meeting the chairman of Campari, a gentleman, his name is Luca Garavoglia. He impressed me a lot. I had a lunch interview with him prior to John. He has this really deep understanding of Jamaican spirits industry. His thoughtful question signaled that Campari was serious about respecting the local expertise, and that fit with and suited me so well. That just sealed the deal for me, and that gave me confidence that we could make it work. Actually,
So did he come to Jamaica for this, or did you have to go to Italy for
no, no,
this?
no. I went to Milan. The where the Duomo is in
Yeah.
Milan. You've been to,
Yeah, I've been. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there are some restaurants across from the Louis Vuitton stores in those mall, the
Okay.
mall over the other side there. Yeah, we had dinner there. Yeah,
Did you go in with one perspective on what it would be like and come out with a different perspective?
honestly, I went in with an open mind. Even personal life, that's something I've found. Every time I anticipate an outcome, like this interview process, I try not to anticipate what's going to happen. I go with an open mind and be prepared for a shift to the left or a shift to the right, a shift up or shift down, and then I manage it. So it was there with open expectations, but it's certainly, if I were to have imagined something by force, it would have exceeded that because it was fantastic.
And I imagine that the integration involved a lot of data reporting and sort of conforming production technologies and production reporting and materials costs and all sorts of things. I imagine required Ray and Nephew to start providing them all in a format that Campari is sort of managing all of their production worldwide. Is that fair to
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because make no mistake, Ray Nephew was advanced in its own way in several respects. So, for example, you speak of like the enterprise system, which I don't know if you're aware of the software called SAP.
Hmm.
Right. So Renev, had implemented SAP before the acquisition, believe me on that, right? And that's what Campari used to. But we had to re-implement it, and it was just as difficult, if not even more difficult than the implementation we had.
Doing it
So,
in the first place, yes.
it's a mixed bag there. But certainly the transfer of information, transfer of technology, the transfer of new ways of working. There's a lot that we gained by that ownership. That has led to ultimately to growth and to the realization of several of the objectives that we had prior that were not realized.
So looking back on your now 15 or so years of service or longer than that, I think, at Ray and Nephew, what are some of your prouder accomplishments?
Yeah, I believe it was probably 17 years. So, it's not cheat on 15, right? but let me tell you this. I'm really proud of many things. A few stand out, but it was just a timeline of proud achievements with people because I honestly am going to tell you, it's not that I'm a modest person, but it wasn't about me. It was about me meeting and engaging with the best people in the world is my view. And to me that is priceless. The work we did to better integrate production with marketing, because we had to intertwine those two. And of course, I value those relationships, as I say, so much. I built across, this network still serve Jamaica and the wider region to this day. um, Marketing prowess, quality, and productivity, and the immediate priorities assigned to that are, I don't think words can actually express, how I feel about those. But I quickly realized that the deeper challenge was team, as I said, and the morale and the cohesion. Those were the important things. Team building became my first task. Quite frankly, it proved essential in driving operational improvements. Merging Reneville with Lascelles operationally and aligning us with Campari's way of working, as I had indicated before, achieving, what would you'd consider consistent revenue and growth, building the Joy Spence Upton Estate Rum experience. That was a project that was like my personal project. I was the team leader for that. So in fact, I ruined a car to make that happen because I had to make probably two, sometimes three trips a month to Appleton to estate from Kingston. That route isn't the best route in the world. It's much improved now with a
I've
new
been there a few
toll road,
times.
you know, it is what it is. So, there are many, were many opportunities for my contribution and many things I did. Like I said, though, and I have to overemphasize, team building was my first task. The alignment came, subsequently by having that team working together. And, I'm also very proud of launching the Jamaica Rum Festival and also introducing being there at the time with the Appleton Estate 50-year-old rum. Boy, to have a sip of that was divine. And you know whose hand was in that? The hand of Joy Spence.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes. So we,
that showcase Jamaica's craftsmanship at the highest level, as far as I am concerned.
yeah, you mentioned talking or working with many very intelligent, passionate people over your career, and one of them, of course, being Joy Spence, who we've previously interviewed here on our Icon series. What did you learn from your time with Joy, and in particular, not just the science and art of rum, but even beyond that?
Joy has been an incredible influence on me. From her, I learned the importance of precision and the discipline of quality systems. Those ISO implementations or blending, the expectations she had from operations in terms of how we age rums, blend rums, bottle rums, the whole caboodle. Before I elaborate on her, from others, I learned about teamwork, persistence, and how to respect tradition while still having innovations for children. But Joy, she's absolutely amazing, an extremely talented person she is. The output of her work demonstrates the immense creativity that is innate in her. I'm always amazed by her one-off limited creations, for example, that she invariably tops herself with each iteration of it. When you think, yeah, this is it, then comes the next one. She has integrated, like you said, the art and science in rum making, and resulting in a fusion and creativity to me that delivers and I should say an organoleptic delight in every one of her creations. But above all, she's a dear friend and confidant of mine. We talk. We live in the same community, by the way. So we talk everything from earthquakes to our kids. She refers things to me. I'd say, Jimmy, are you interested? She's just such a dear friend, a brilliant person. When an ordinary guy like me has a brilliant friend like that, you can just imagine who their beneficiary is, and that is moi.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate to say I have many dear friends now in the rum industry. Despite being here in a short time, so many people who I've learned so much from. So I totally get what you're saying there. So one of our prior Icon series interviewees has been Evan Brown. Tell us about your interactions and your relationship with Evan.
Well, Evan, let me first say, many persons of repute shaped the industry in profound ways, and I had the privilege of being associated with them. I mean, we can include people like Michael Delevante. He's a master distiller, I believe, right?
Right.
So, you know, look and learn. There's Lloyd Forbes, who brought operational discipline. I think my acquaintance with him really has come about from my involvement with the Spirit School and Caribbean Molasses in a limited way. And of course, Robert Henriquez, he's embodied the entrepreneurial spirit of Jamaican rum. His family owned the New Yarmouth. And
Right.
of
Yeah.
course, I have
All
association with.
previous Icon series here. So our
Yeah,
interviewees here. You're listing them
see,
all.
yeah. So in rum and sugar, and I've had that experience. He was he chaired the Sugar Industry Authority, I believe, prior to me. So, and I'm the current chair of the spirits of the sugar industry authority. My interactions with them taught me a lot, even including humility and to reinforce the importance of learning from those who came before me. Very, very important, you know. But you asked me about Evan Brown, so I digressed, right? Is you're at a long been recognized as a stalwart in Jamaica's rum and sugar industries, and I've been fortunate to benefit from his mentorship. For example, he's such a generous person. You know, everyone actually, you know, will call you to share. You know, it's one thing if you call somebody to say, you know, he'd call me and, you know, said, Jimmy, you know, boy, you know, first he'd preface it with, I'm proud of you, and, you know, and I want you to succeed. And, you know, he's very magnanimous, generous. It's an amazing gentleman. You know, he's certainly a true mentor and an example for me. You know, his contributions in both rum and sugar mirror my own journey too, as you know, because of these institutions he's led and I am now leading. I think it's amazing, and I've often drawn on his wisdom and little gems that he's shared with me. He certainly helped me understand the deep interdependence of sugar and rum, and prepared me to step into that leadership role, both regional and I guess ultimately global if you look at WIRSPA, because I consider WIRSPA global. But certainly our involvement in Rome is itself global. So I have to say that his assistance aided that. His extensive participation across both sectors, you know, laid a strong foundation, and in many ways, my own journey, like I said, parallel his. So it really helped me in terms of making those alignments. Those would include me being chairman of the Sugar Industry Authority, chairman of the Spirits Pool Association, and chairman of Caribbean Molasses, and of course, more recently, chairman of WIRSPA, West Indies Rum Spirits Producers Association. So his earlier guidance has been especially valuable since now I'm navigating what I consider a particularly turbulent period for the sugar industry and even the rum industry too, you know, what with the tariffs and all of that. You know, once the sugar industry, once a colonial enterprise, you know, dependent on slave labor, and the industry has transitioned to modern ownership structures. Yet, we continue to face significant challenges. We've had factory closures, we've had declining production, and you know, the support that the producers and the farmers need is unquestionable. I mean, they need that to support the the demand for cane juice and molasses to support the rum spirits industry. So you can see the integration of the two from that standpoint. So his mentorship, Evans, that is, you know, helped me to understand this in interdependence, as I was saying, of rum and sugar. And it prepared me to take on weighty responsibilities of leadership, you know, within the industry. In today's rum industry, and man, issues such as tariffs, responsible consumption, the promotion of geographical indications, you know, that's a significant one. They require clear strategies for growth and sustainability melded into all of that. So, you know, it's multi discipline, made up of several parts. And I, in my position today, have to navigate through those for us to realize the benefits and growth that we require. So his example certainly reinforced the need to ensure that the Caribbean is not only continues to contribute to global wealth creation as it has for centuries, but also it to secure tangible benefits for the people of our region through increased production, increased brand development, international recognition, and certainly the ownership of what is ours. And I'm talking like, you know, intellectual property here, right? Because that has to be deep seated so that we can ultimately benefit and certainly not repeat the mistakes of the past.
So you're currently serving as the chair of Jamaican's not only Jamaica Spirits Pool, but also which represents all of Jamaica's rum makers, but also as WIRSPA's board chairman. Has representing rum makers beyond just Wray and Nephew and Appleton changed your perspective on Caribbean rum's challenges and future? And anything you'd like to accomplish in your current roles in that regard?
Absolutely. I would say it has changed my perspective. I'd say it has broadened my perspective, subtle difference there, right? Representing well, even with Spirit Pool, I do lead and represent multiple producers, but this has broadened it in that regard in terms of a Caribbean perspective. So representing multiple producers, has done just that, broadened my perspective from company specific concerns to the health of an entire sector and region, right? I see the need to increase molasses production, speaking a local sense, for example, to reduce the illicit sugar trade, position Caribbean rum as both premium and authentic. So, it's local, it's regional, and there are a lot of overlaps there. So my goal is to ensure sustainable growth through and through. And global recognition of the unique identity of Caribbean rum, right? And speaking WIRSPA wise, representing WIRSPA means speaking to the entire Caribbean rum industry, not just one company or a country. Success depends on empowering internally. With empowering committees, staff, volunteers, while ensuring accountability. And fairness, because that has to be patently demonstrated, I think, for credibility. I'm committed to integrity and transparency, to navigating differences, which there are going to always be differences with respect to views and positions, and of course to incorporate extreme professionalism in making all of that happen. Beyond internal governance, we must strengthen the external relationships with governments, industry partners, and the business community, and of course global organizations, like those health organizations, so that the Caribbean rum gains the recognition and the protection it deserves globally. So there's a whole body of work for that. The future lies certainly in unity, authenticity, advocating for interests and telling our unique Caribbean story to the world. Now, let me say, very importantly, the WIRSPA Secretariat and the leadership of WIRSPA remains at the forefront and in the center of us accomplishing these objectives. And I think, thankfully, we have a first class, first rated secretariat with leadership that, is second to none. But, I am simply amazed.
I agree. I've been very impressed just working with Vaughn, just like how much that he knows and how thoughtful he is about all these various issues that are confronting all of the rum makers.
I've been known to call Vaughn and in the moment, and then he opens, give me some real gems, and then we have a conversation. Then I recall, and then all is well. Vaughn is absolutely amazing. I'm happy to be associated with him.
Obviously, rum is dependent upon the sugar industry, and the Caribbeans for decades have been had challenges with the cultivation of sugar, sugar crops, pricing of sugar, and so forth. And many countries that were once not only making enough, making sugar and making enough molasses to support the rum industries, now countries that are icons, Demerara molasses made Demerara rum, and Jamaican molasses made Jamaican rum. Even countries like Jamaica are now having to import certain amounts of molasses to sort of keep up with the rum industry demands. As chairman of Jamaica's Sugar Industry Authority, tell us about the challenges Jamaica is facing at the moment and what you hope to achieve while you're the head of the Sugar Industry Authority.
Right. So, here is another huge area. And I view these assignments as complementary because they're very well integrated, right? The sugar industry is facing enormous challenges. Over the years, several factories have closed. Production has declined. And among other things, there's a deep need for revised regulatory, that is, legal framework in terms of the laws that guide the industry, right? You know, Ray Nephew exited the sugar business, so you can understand how deeply familiar that would be in terms of my experience leading up to this point. Golden Grove closed, and before that, you had several other factories that were closed. And I know everyone gave the bill and receipt of where, where we started in the hundreds and where we we landed today. But sufficing to say, there's great need for that. There is a ray of hope in a couple of years. One, we've been able to, at the request of our ministry, contribute to revising the act that specifies the regulations for the sugar industry. And that has been very important. And we've brought together the farmers and the manufacturers along with the SIA, and we've sat and gone through it completely, making the recommendations. And we've actually done that and submitted it to government. So we're
Yeah.
we're working to revise the act that regulates the industry, and we've brought together the manufacturers, the farmers, along with the sugar industry authority secretariat, and we've worked through that, completed it, made our recommendations, and submitted that to the government. Of course, they're going to wordsmith that. We're just giving them the ideation portion of it, and they're going to put and take as they see fit. But I think it bodes well for the industry. The other thing I must report on too, there's a ray of hope, because there's actually a new sugar factory to come into being. It's very early stages as we speak, but that's going to increase the industry by a whopping 50%. That's because there are only two now. so that I really look forward to that. Um, my focus is on modernizing the industry. I mean, the capital stock as we speak isn't as good as it ought to be. And I want to increase farmer participation. We've put together some measures at the SIA to help to train farmers, giving them technical advice in the field where it is necessary. Better integrating sugar with the rum sector is something that I'm focusing on. Of course, you know, yeah, we have to import a certain amount of molasses, but to the extent that we can improve the volumes of local molasses, that's going to be to the benefit of both industries, sugar and rum. So you can see how that would work in tandem. This integrates the need for us to strengthen also the geographical indications in promoting responsible consumption and expanded both branded and bulk rum exports. It's tied into each other, as you can well appreciate, right? So that stronger vertical integration of the two industries, the rum on top of the sugar molasses, sugar molasses rum, is that ladder. To the extent that we can develop and grow on that, is going to be to our benefit.
Final question. You're having good friends over for an evening of fun and enjoyment. What rum are you drinking?
Oh my goodness! Did you just say this is the final question? I thought we are going to go on for. I thought we are just halfway there. Just kidding.
I would
Um,
happily go on, but I know you've got things to do. So
not at all. That really is a delightful question, and I'm glad you're using this to punctuate this conversation. I enjoy many expressions, and I'm going to describe what I'm saying here using my words. I hope those who have greater expertise than me don't put me to the sword for this. But each of these rums that, and this is locally, because I'm not really privy to much in terms of the regional rums, as you would imagine, right? So each has its own personality, really. So Hamden Estate, 8-year-old, that pure single, it greets me with its lush complexity, caramelized fruit, should I say, sweet spices, and a lingering funk that promotes a lively conversation. Then there's Monimus Plantation Special Reserve, which offers a kind of smooth oak and ripe fruit, perfect for a quiet reflection. I would think I've had that. Worthy Park has a single estate 12, which 12-year-old. It delivers a sort of a, how should I say, a tropical brightness with toffee warmth and like a deep breath under the Caribbean sun, as I would put it. But truth be told, and I'm a simple person, my constant, which is what you asked me about, is Appleton Estate 8-year-old reserve. All right. You'd say, what an ordinary fellow this is, after having sipped 50-year-old. That's my go-to, it's sort of a honeyed warmth, notes of vanilla, toasted oak, and citrus. Yeah, it feels like home to me, and I love home, authenticity, me, harmonious, enduring, and quietly joyful. And there's a pun in that.
Understood. Yeah, it's interesting. I noticed you diplomatically managed to cover all of Jamaica's four rum makers, so kudos for that. And I agree with everything you said about them. I enjoy all of the Jamaican rums. I have all of them. I have probably somewhere between 80 and 100 different Jamaican rums at home, so I've tasted quite a lot, and I agree.
Yes.
In regards to the Appleton, the signature, I agree that so many people gravitate towards longer and longer aged, but I feel like there's a sweet spot at like 5-10 years of aging where you get like the fermentation flavors are still there and the wood and the oak is still there, but you haven't overrun it. I'm glad to see you choosing not going with the 21 or something like that, just because they all have important role to play, but I think there's a sweet spot in there. So good. So, final words you like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, one of the things I focus on is how global things are today. In today's world, communication is broad. We know just about everything. We know about too many things and so on. But specifically for our industry, I think the word for us is collaboration. Not even cooperation, but collaboration. Because if we can collaborate well, if we can understand each other's needs, if we can support each other, particularly where it's mutually beneficial, we are going to make our benefit and our place in the world a better place. And by our, I mean the Caribbean, right? With all of our countries, our shared experiences. If we can do that, we'd have done ourselves proud. And I often reminisce in my quiet moments to say, when you do what you do it in such a way where the generations after you reviewing you with super intelligence, I guess, will comment that you did right, you did your best, and you were there to implement positive change. And so for our rum industry, that's what I work and seek to do in the best way that I can.
I couldn't agree more. To live your life your way in such a way that people that come after you, generations that come after you, think he created a better world. He did something and moved the needle forwards. So thank you for all that. Jimmy, a pleasure having you on here. We had some great material. Thank you again for being here. Take care.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me to this conversation.
Of course. Till next time.